Hi, I'm P, and this is my podcast. Hey everybody, this is a live podcast that I'm doing with Jena. We're talking about transformation. Alright, no we're not. I'm just gonna do this filter thing. We're talking about just like the concept of transformation, talking about speed, we're talking about the necessity of certain things. Hello, Jena's gonna hop on. To request. We have some submitted questions. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you and see you perfectly.
Amazing.
Awesome. And right now you're in London, right?
Yeah.
And sorry?
I said we have like the last bit of sunlight right now because it's like
Yeah. Yeah. How long have you been there?
So I moved back here in February. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've only been there. I've been there one time. It was a really interesting time. It was beautiful. But cool. So, sorry?
You have to come visit. I'm in a super artistic neighborhood now. Yeah.
Yes. I'm coming to Europe next year probably to visit my brother in Italy. So maybe I might be like, hey, what's up? But cool. So welcome everybody. This is a live podcast recording of Cheat Codes. Jena and I are going to talk about simplicity, speed, and transformation. I put this on my stories, but we're both 5'2" manifesting generators. And so like speed is something that I feel like both of our energy just tends to reflect. But also translating wisdom with simplicity is a thing that I find that both of us do as well. So we have some submitted questions for Jena, but Jena, actually, I found out about you on a podcast and you talked about Psyche. And this is years ago. And I dived into the process of Psyche very deeply. And I was like, what? What's this? Because the thing about me is that I was outside of spirituality for a long time, kind of watching it. And I would notice that it seemed like there's a lot of focus around things taking a long time, a lot of work and a lot of like sacrifice and things like that to be able to transform or get what you want and things like that. And then you talked about Psyche and that did something in my head because I was just like, ease is a thing that I've always like, I'm like, I know it's right there. I can feel it. It's like right there. And then I heard you talk about it and I'm like, see? So thank you, first of all, for talking about Psyche. But would you mind talking about how you got into your subconscious work, maybe talking about Psyche if you want to, because it seems like you've kind of created your own thing at this point. So how did you get into the way that you do spirituality?
Yeah, for sure. So, well, I'm so glad that inspired you. And I know what the feeling is to find something that you're just like, I knew it was there. So I'm really happy about that. So the way that I got into my line of work is started from a health crisis. So for a long time, I think like about a decade, I suffered with polycystic ovarian syndrome, also known as PCOS, endometriosis, anxiety, depression, and I was on a lot of medication for many years. So I was like at a breaking point in my life where I was like, I need to get better because my doctors were basically telling me I needed to stay on medication for the rest of my life, to the point where they told me I needed to get my taken out if I didn't want to have the same amount of pain that I was in so chronically. So at that point, I was just like, fuck that. Like, that's not going to be my life. So I really dived deep into understanding more about how the body works, the mind-body connection. And my mom actually introduced me to all of the subconscious tools that I have and also some of the more like energy tools that I use as well. And that really on this journey of self-discovery and I was able to essentially then heal my body completely from all these incurable conditions using my subconscious, using, energy work and other lifestyle changes that I made. So that's really kind of how I got here today. And then obviously I think we've been following each other's work for a few years now, and you see the metamorphosis of my work, and I just started diving in more into my own spirituality, my own meditations, and that's where I receive a lot of my own downloads of how I can bring tools to the world to kind of simplify things. So I have something called an upgrade, which is basically my own spin on all of this work that I received through meditation of basically how to remove density and energy from large groups of people. There's definitely an evolution that's been happening, and it's really because I've just been open to being like, well, if this can happen, how about this and this, and just kind of like testing and seeing what happens.
Yes, I love that. And like I've like seen you do it in real time, and it's so wild. But I feel like we've kind of mirrored each other actually in that way of like, okay, if you could do this, you could do that, and that, and like this very quick unfolding. And so witnessing you do this work, and I've done your upgrades before, and it's so magical. And like, I feel like it's really interesting that your work is about removing density rather than trying to like manually fix the thing, if that makes any sense.
Like for style.
Exactly. And that I feel like is what lends to the speed as well of the type of transformations that happen. And that being said, I want to talk about one concept or one thing that I wrote down. And how fast have you seen that transformation can happen?
Well, for myself, I've seen it very instantly, and with my clients. Like, there have been times where I've had one session with a client and all of a sudden their acne's cleared up and they've had it for years. Or, just being able to just manipulate the energy for your intention can happen like that. See, we have these beliefs that it's like, oh, if I've had this thing or if I had this block for X amount of time, it's going to take twice as long to get rid of. And my whole approach is that it's just a perception. Like, how quickly can you dissolve that belief, that identity that will lead you to the reality that you want to be in? Yes. So, yeah.
Yes. And I love that, because I feel like that concept has been a thing that has been, as soon as I decided that I was willing to be someone who was a bit more open to spiritual topics and things of that nature, something in me was just like, okay, like instantaneous healing was like a thing that I was like, that's obviously a part of this. Like, and I found that like no one was talking about it. And I was like, this is so interesting that no one's talking about like speed and how fast things can happen, which I understand. I understand that we have to like work with the nature of someone's energy, and some people do need to kind of take things a little bit slower and be a bit more gradual. That's absolutely okay. But then there's some people who are kind of like, well, no, I just want to go like that, and then I'm done. And I'm one of those people who is like that. So because I'm like that, I know that there's more of us out there who are just like, we're just gonna do the thing, and then exactly.
And to your point, like, it is what I've noticed through my work over the years is understanding that it's not the same speed for everyone, right? Like, someone might have a problem that they've had for many years, and solving it or dissolving the issue in a few months is speed. For other people, it's an hour. For other people, it's an upgrade, like not even having to do anything, right? So what I've understood is like, there is no quick time, like it, because time doesn't exist. It's non-linear, we know that. So it's like really the belief of the other person and what they think is possible for them to be able to then execute with the right tools and support to provide that transformation in their own time. Because I don't do the transformation. I'm not getting the work done. I'm showing you that this is possible. Now let's dissolve all of these things that I've told you that it's not. And however long it takes is however long you decide it takes. So that's how I approach it.
That's
because the 5 was a lot of projection. Like,
yes. I'm like, while you were talking, I'm like, I feel like I'm talking. That's so weird. That's very wild. And because I literally feel like that's the same work that I'm doing in a completely different capacity. And so I think it's interesting that we're both at this time, like bringing this into the world. And so I'm wondering like what that means for the collective. Like, why is it that we have these new, like kind of fast moving transformational modalities arriving on the planet right now? It's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
But cool. So I want to get into a specific question that someone had that was really great. How to find peace within instability rather than being used to feeling grounded in chaos.
So how to find peace in stability?
Yeah. So to me, it seems kind of like maybe this person was used to needing to create peace because they were in chaos. And they're kind of like, well, how do I just like find peace while I'm in stability?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's a lot to do with just taking small steps in getting you to that place where that feels normal in your body, where that peace just feels like a natural thing. Like you never want to force anything to be for you, because at the end of the day, it's just going to backfire because of whatever your subconscious blueprint is, kind of showing you this is what's actually underneath it all. So it would really be accessing and defining what parts of the chaos that you have generated some sort of comfort in, or where you started identifying like, this is true for me, this is how I am. And just by creating that awareness, you can then start to take action against it, to that version of reality and bring in more of the version of reality, which is the peace that you're looking for. So I know that's kind of like out there, but
yeah,
trying to like bring it down.
No, but I feel like that makes sense. It's trying to do things little by little sometimes, because for me, my childhood was real chaotic and real traumatic. And for me, the idea of peace, I remember a moment maybe about 3 or 4 years ago where I was like, it would be cool to like even consider that the concept of peace could be a truth in my reality. Like I would be like, I could see people who are experiencing peace and I'd be like, that'd be so cool to even consider. And so trying to go from a place where you don't even know if you could consider that peace as an option to being like stable and peaceful, that can sometimes be a really big jump. And so taking things gradually and kind of like breaking it down, I feel like is really helpful if that feels like too much movement.
Totally. And also like defining what areas of your life you want to start bringing this piece into.
Yeah.
Like, if you are so stressed out about money, I wouldn't start to bring in peace around money. I would start to bring it like in different areas of your life, so that then it just kind of seamlessly permeates through those chaotic spaces. And then it just becomes like a natural, like, okay, well, I know how to be at peace when I wake up, or I know how to be at peace in my relationship, or I know how to do this. And then seeing how starts to infuse, because everything's connected, right? So just finding what is the easiest way to bring that into your life, what it is, and then start taking action on that.
Yes. I love that. It's like looking at where in life you've already done the thing, and then how can you like apply that to some other places and kind of like slowly but surely move the same energy over to the other aspects of your reality. I love that, because I did that with like my partner for some reason. Like, because of what I went through, me having the partner that I have, who's like soulmate, everything that I want partner, that felt, I was a lot more open to that than like health at the time. And so it was really easy for me to like kind of move my openness and acceptance of love over to, rather than health, it actually had to move over to money immediately, which is because health was like so like, at the time. And so it's just beautiful to like apply the energy to things that are like ready for it, like open to it.
Yeah.
Cool. Another question. How do I activate a subconscious foundation for changes that I want to make in the physical world? I feel like that question is like the basis of everything that you do, kind of.
So how do we start to create like physical change?
Yeah, like from a subconscious foundation, how to create physical change.
Yeah, well, it's really important to understand that, in my perspective, the subconscious is the basis of everything we experience in this reality. So it's like all these programs and belief systems that are running in your mind are the basis of your physical reality, right? So in order to start implementing what in your subconscious, it's getting really clear on your belief systems are, what you feel like your limits are of what you can and cannot do, and then start taking action to align with those subconscious beliefs and bringing reality.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And the thing about like physical action too, because I don't know, I don't ever know where someone is on their spiritual journey when they find my content, but sometimes in the beginning of the spiritual journey, a lot of times we kind of were like, okay, so I can create reality, and that means that it can just pop up in front of me with no action. And the thing is that I feel like a lot of times spirituality is appealing because there are people who can do that, and they're kind of like at the forefront of spirituality, and they're like, I just create it and it's on my doorstep the next day. And there are people who really can do that with minimal action. But the thing is that we're growing. Like, we're still learning how to manifest. I feel like maybe in, I don't know, some years we're going to be able to say like, I want a ball in my hand and a ball will appear, but we haven't grown to develop those types of skills yet. So there's still some action steps, because we believe they're necessary, that do need to happen. You have to get into agreement.
Yeah, and I also believe that, the people that you do see, like, oh, they just like manifest things out of thin air. I really think we don't look at the full picture of how much struggle did they have in their life where they're able to just channel this through and get things that look to us like nothing, right? It's like success isn't built overnight, right? Like, there's a lot of energetic, subconscious work that goes on behind the scenes before someone gets to a place where they can just like manifest things, right? Some people could say, my health journey, it's like, oh, I healed myself in a year. But it's like I was struggling for over a decade. So, it's looking at even how you're looking at that timeline of having things just happen very easily. I think a holistic picture to really be able to see how things manifest in that way.
Yeah, that's true, because you never really know exactly someone's journey. But yeah, I love that. So another question, how long would you say your businesses went from idea till now, including pauses and breaks? I'm like, I don't know exactly, because my business is always unfolding. It's just
totally. I guess like when we like put it out there.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I answer it to the best of your ability, and then I'll answer it to the best of mine.
Okay, cool. So, I had no intention of having a business like this. Like, this is truly just something that manifested itself, like, if I'm being true to this statement, because really I was just on a journey of healing myself. Like, I couldn't even think about getting a job because I was like always sick. So it wasn't like something where I was like, okay, I'm gonna all of a sudden become this healer and do this thing, and like, that's gonna be my life. It really unfolded very naturally. People could see the transformation that they were experiencing, and then that just started to spread. And then I didn't have a social media for the first like 2 years of my business, and I was just kind of doing things like for free or like, donation based, whatever. And then when I got on social media, that's really when it took off. So it really depends. Like, I guess it started a few years ago. My social media account started 3 years ago or something, or 2 years ago. So it depends how you get it. A natural unfolding. And obviously now I have more systems and structures and operations in my business that, I'm like, oh damn, I'm running a business. Like, we have to implement things. So yeah.
Same, pretty much. Except I started out with social media. I started out with like focusing on art things. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just had a general intention of like creating things that have power in them, and then when people look at them, they have power. That was like my main thing. And so I kept looking in that direction, and then stuff keeps unfolding, so that I started my Instagram in like 2017, just posting art things, and then stuff just keeps happening. So I'm not exactly planning out to my business per se. I'm just allowing it to unfold and create itself, essentially, like art.
And I think that's like the best way, because then it's just like, it feels like you're in a game. You're just like, okay, well, what do I want to like create today? Or what type of experience or, topics do I want to talk about? And I think that's what's really exciting about the time we're in as well, is that, you can give yourself a platform and share the things that you want to share, and people just get excited about them. And that's how you build community and support.
Yeah, Yeah, it's amazing. We're born at the exact time for us, at least that's what I feel. Okay, I'm going to pop a question up that was submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. How much of the original Psyche balances have you initially learned, or do you still apply it in your work? Because that's for you, because
Sure. Yeah, so I have done all the workshops, and I used to host workshops in LA and New York and London. So, Psyche is one of the tools that I use, but I have a lot more in my toolbox now that I've just developed and kind of morphed into my own method. So it's definitely a part of my work, but it's not just the entirety of my work, because now I'm more in like creative mode and, exploration and just trying to see how different things, I guess, as an MG come together and help people in the quickest amount of time. So yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Another question. I love this question. Moving from envy to inspiration. How do you do that?
Okay, well, I think like envy is a good thing because it's basically showing us like what we want, right? I think when we look at it like from an envious perspective, it's like scarcity because it's like, oh, I envy you, like you can have that, but I can't have that. But when we start to recognize and say, okay, well, that person has something that I want, recognizing that it's what you want, and then allowing yourself to be real with yourself of like, what do I need to do to actually get that, right? Do I need to create more money for myself? Do I need to create more connections for myself? What is the thing that they have that would make my life better, and how can I go about getting it?
Yes. I agree. And I feel like when you feel envy, that's a great time to check in with yourself, because the reason why envy feels like envy and not admiration is because there's a negative connotation to it. And so it's like, what is the negative connotation that you're applying to the sensation of actually admiring someone? You're kind of distorting the way that you're looking at that person. And so what's the distortion? And so oftentimes the distortion is like, you kind of put a lens in front of admiration, and you're like, oh, I can't have that thing. So when you remove the lens of I can't have that thing, then you're back to admiration again, rather than envy. And so I guess letting yourself not be upset for experiencing the sensation of envy. It's just like, okay, well, what lenses are you applying to how you're viewing this person?
Because like perspective, perception is everything. And I think like with something like envy, it's almost like we feel so disconnected from that possibility for us that it's too big of a gap. So there's like a distortion. It's like, well, this person's living this reality and I'm living this reality, and there's no chance that I like jump to this one. And that's when your own limitation, your own beliefs are kind of like at the forefront, showing you that like, wait, you're limiting yourself. You're the one that's saying this isn't possible for you. Or there might be a part of you that's too lazy to want to do it or to create it for yourself. So it's just easier to look at that and say, well, I can't have that. You're lucky to have that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Okay, another question. If you are, this is from someone, if you are aware of triggers, are you over them or do they still hold weight? How do you find what you're not aware of? Okay, so for me, like when it comes to triggers, I've started calling them tension instead, because I feel like the word trigger I feel like we use it a lot, and I don't like my connotation to the word trigger, so I've changed it to tension. And so when I'm experiencing tension, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm experiencing tension. But I'm someone who, if I'm at a restaurant, someone like is rude to me, you're gonna see it in my face immediately. There's not gonna be any sort of like everything's fine, there's no sort of like I'll feel tension. The thing is that I'm not upset at myself for experiencing the tension. I will slow down while I'm experiencing that tension, and I'll ask myself, like, what's the truth of what I'm experiencing right now? So let's say it's someone being rude to me at a restaurant. I'll examine all the thoughts that are like behind that tension. So it's because I'm like, they think my outfit's stupid. It's because they're taller than me. Like, and so I'll kind of go over all of the things that are happening in the background behind that tension, and I'll examine it, and I'm like, okay, so this tension, part of it's because I'm telling myself lies. Part of it is because this person is actually disrespecting me, and like, if that's what's happening, and I am not okay with that. So how can I show up to let reality know that I will not be disrespected. Like, and so allowing yourself to get into the tension and examine it.
I agree with that 100%. I think like the worst thing you can do is like bypass it or be like, oh, I'm triggered, or I'm holding tension, as you say, and then just being like, well, I'm spiritually evolved, so I'm not gonna like, that doesn't bother me, but then it's like actually eating it, even if it's just like being super real with yourself and not letting your ego get in the way and being like, well, that really messed with me. I didn't appreciate that, and go through the reasons like you mentioned, as to like picking it apart so that it doesn't hold like the same intense energy. It can start to like unclench a little bit, and then you can start deciding how you want to respond to the situation. I think every single person gets triggered. I don't care how evolved you are. That's just like a fact of like us being in this simulation and humans and having, you know, mirrors of each other, and, you know, just the human experience of just experiencing what it's like to be a human. And I think it's how we navigate our interactions with people or circumstances or things that really determine how that trigger will either continue to manifest itself because you're not dealing with it, or to, you know, just completely dissolve and then have a different experience come next time. Because it's showing you that it's not going to come back in the same way. I really believe that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I like looking at reality like a video game sometimes. And sometimes triggers are like that moment in a video game where you approach a character and they give you all these options on a menu that you can choose from. And the game will unfold depending on what option you choose from that menu. And so the trigger comes up, it's like, okay, I've triggered this response. Now I get to choose. Will I respond like this? 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 If I respond like this, then the game goes this way. And so a menu option essentially drops down when you experience triggers.
That's so on point. I love that. And if you think about that, then you don't have to feel so serious about whatever the next thing comes up in your experience. Think of what you said, the drop down menu, and like, which reality do I want to continue with?
Yeah, and sometimes I'll choose the drop down menu of like, I'm going to create drama right now. I'm going to, because I feel like making that. Just add a little spice to life.
We're all growing. Sometimes we can still be petty. I mean, I'm still petty. Like, my throat's for stupid shit. So it's like, and then I'm like, oh, well, that was pretty petty, but, you know, it's funny too. So, like, you know.
Yeah.
And not holding yourself to a certain standard of feeling like you need to, like, do things in a certain way in order to feel evolved or, like, you know, enlightened or whatever it is, like that spirituality, you know, whatever belief system you have around spirituality and like what it means to be you on this journey.
Yeah, yes. Cool. I have a question that went in the little questiony box thing. Sorry, someone's deciding to do things and my dog's upset. Cool. So this person asked, how can we take our first step in timeline jump or manifestation? I'm a 2/4 manifesting generator. Okay, so the thing about timeline jumping is that timeline jumping is you becoming yourself. That's all that's happening, is you're becoming yourself. So when starting to become a certain version of yourself, usually we become a different version of ourselves because the version of ourselves is that we're experiencing now is experiencing things that we're not a big fan of, and we want to create or experience the contrast of the thing that we're going through. And so where are you experiencing some events in reality that don't align with your desired state of being? And then, okay, so let's say I'm feeling ill. I want to jump into the timeline where I am not feeling ill because feeling ill makes me not able to do things. I just don't feel good. I'd rather feel different. That is the first step, is that gap between where you are and where you want to be. Locating that, setting that intention, aiming. After aiming, the thing about the way that I see reality is once we're aiming, we're moving in the direction of the thing that we want. Like, it's just happening. It's happening. It can happen faster. But if you're aiming and paying attention to the thing that you are wanting, it's unfolding. It's happening. Mm. And so letting yourself aim is the beginning. And then asking yourself, okay, well, how do I want this to unfold, or what, how will I allow this to unfold, rather? How fast do I want to allow this to unfold? Asking yourself those questions. But I think the first thing is aim, and that comes from experiencing usually things that you don't want. It doesn't have to be super dramatic. It doesn't have to be this like intense trauma and suffering. I feel like that's what we're starting to kind of grow past right now, is the need for experiencing like trauma to create that new thing. But notice the things that you're not preferring. What would you prefer? That's the beginning. I don't know if you have another, because that timeline jumping manifestation, I'm not sure if that's...
No, that's super powerful. Like the way that I just understood that through my perception was just getting really focused on what it is that you want instead. And I think a lot of the time when we're in a difficult situation, we just continue to focus on what's going on. Like my back hurts and I can't walk and all these things, versus like when you, it's interesting because when I ask my clients, like, what do you want? They're like, I don't want my back to hurt. I'm like, okay, what's the opposite of your back not hurting? Like it's of what it is, but it's not the absence of the problem, right? What is having a back that doesn't hurt look like, right? It's like, I feel strong, I feel vital, I feel whatever it is. But I think we need to get more clear and focused on what it is that we do want, rather than like the absence of the pain or whatever suffering that you're experiencing. So I think that's super important.
Yeah. And the thing about focusing on what you do want is that the absence of something is not really something that we know how to describe. Like it's not, we can, like, for instance, silence. Like, what is silence? It's the lack of something. It doesn't have, you can't say that it is something because it's the lack of something, right? And that's kind of difficult for us to create from. For us to create from lack is very hard, and kind of like, we're kind of like, what do you mean? What is it? What do you want? And so letting yourself get to the point where you can create more density around the thing that you're desiring than what you're experiencing now. Yeah, that's to me the basis of timeline jumping and manifestation.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think we have another topic that we're still okay. We're good on time. We have like 15 more minutes. I wanted to talk about doing new and unheard of types of work and how you've been processing that personally.
Like different tools and different, yeah. Did you hear my tower story?
No.
I don't know if I can say this on here, but the 5G tower story that like was put up in my neighborhood. Did I tell you that?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, this is like to your point of like new and different ways. So my mom, who's basically like, if you know me at all, it's like she starts everything for me. She basically gives me all the tools because I can't be bothered to go investigate. She's a woman. Like, let me investigate experiment, and like this is what she does, right? And then she gives me all the tools, and then I like make them my own, and then we're here. So recently she has, basically started doing this process that she learned, but then modified on her own and experimented with, of sending light in a specific way. So she's now on this whole thing of like, we can move past the subconscious, we can move past all these tools that are easy, but still like, be able to change things with light consciousness, right?
Yes.
And so she basically started teaching me how to like send light to like, dissolve traffic, or like get a parking spot, or like, get the electricity to work. She tried it on the dishwasher that was broken for 4 weeks, and then she sent light and it started working again. So she's all on this thing. So recently there was a tower, like a 5G tower that was put up in my neighborhood, and I was like really pissed off because I'm like, EMFs, I'm very sensitive. Like I don't want any of this stuff around me. And so she was like, just send it light. So I started sending it light, and then I saw that like these guys were like climbing on it to like fix it after a few days. And I eventually was like, just kept seeing them on this tower. I'm like, this can't be like on if, if people are climbing up, right? So I'm walking back and I meet one of the guys and I'm like, why are you guys climbing on this? Like, I see you doing it every day. And he's like, because it's not working. And holy shit, like this is the future, right? Like intention, light, focus, speed, belief, like anything can happen. that really told me that, like, you know, even when we feel like there are so many things that are out of our control, or like too many powers that are outside of us, that feel like they're manipulating our consciousness, our freedom, our ability to like have the life or reality we want, this really just threw this out the door for me. And I basically saw in real time that it's possible to manipulate things. And I already had that belief, right? It took a few years to understand, like, through my own clients and through my own life, of like how things can shift very quickly. But this was just like taking it to the next level. And I think that's what happens, right? You just keep going up the ladder of like possibility and limitlessness. And so that was one experience that I had with like kind of a crazy tool that she taught me.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And that, I feel like a part of like doing work that is new or unheard of, or like it's hard to kind of tie it back to tradition sometimes. It can feel really frightening to do that, because it's kind of like, where did you learn this? Where did it come from? I feel like it's definitely like a second line too. It's like,
Totally.
the origin, and we're like, what do you mean the origin? And so what's really, I feel, helpful is having your own personal experience with these things and doing it over and over again, and showing yourself like, okay, I know what I'm doing with this. I have repeatedly done this. I've experimented with my own self, and not needing third party support sometimes in the beginning is really, sorry?
Or validation.
Yes, exactly. And that not needing that validation is a really big part of being able to create a new thing, because you're not going to get it in the beginning, because it literally doesn't exist anymore. What are people validating? Like, to expect someone to validate something immediately that's new, it's going to be rough. And that's honestly like not fair to them either, to expect them to validate a thing that they've never experienced either. So you do it first. You validate yourself. You validate your own experiences. It's so funny. I do this thing with light, actually, where I'll cover myself in certain shades of light, depending on what type of experiences that I'm trying to have that day. I used to do it way more often when I lived like in the city, and because I'd walk around and I'd be on the train, there'd be like people around and things would happen. But I would cover myself with the shade of red sometimes, where I'd be like, this is a repelling barrier in my body, and strangers will not talk to me today. I can't handle that today. No one would talk to me. If I didn't do that, it felt like there was a light beaming from my body. People were like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, where did you even come from? Yeah. Why are you talking to, like, I'm trying to go to the grocery store. But that, like, creating your power and believing in it first is like the nature of creating the new things that exist.
And I think, you know, now it's like we're really connecting back to our innate power and things that we can't necessarily verbalize or explain. And I think we're starting to see that that's becoming more normal, of like people having their own tools. Like, take my upgrade, for example, right? This just completely morphed into something else. Like, and I even sometimes I'm like, how is this happening? Like, I don't know how this is working. I literally don't know the mechanics, but I can see it in my meditation, and I can see and I can feel it, and other people feel it. And that should be enough to verify that, you know, we are so much more than this dimension, right? And like able to experiment and play and let your imagination try different things as possibility will completely open your mind and reality to so many different experiences, because you're trusting yourself and you're trusting your own abilities that are just locked away within you. And I learned a lot about, you know, my own powers and abilities through working with, you know, a shaman, and he was doing things that I was like, I don't even understand like what you're doing, but I was feeling things, and then he would make me try things out, and I'm like, how are you feeling what I'm doing? And it's just really about trusting yourself and knowing that it's just your belief that is preventing you from making miracles happen. That's all it is.
Yes, I love that. We have another question. I think we have like 5 more minutes left. Where is it?
I love this, by the way. I feel like we could talk for ages.
I'm having so much fun, and I feel like I don't know what I'm about to create after I get off this live. I can feel my energy being like, I need to do something. So I'm very excited. I want to talk about simplicity. Yeah, let's just talk about simplicity and what that means in creating reality for you. How do you experience the nature of simplicity?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, especially from being on this journey of like trying to figure out like my physical body and then eating things that I wanted to manifest in my life, I found that it's not about adding things to you, but like, you know, releasing things. So, you know, the simplest way that I create things is I find what I want, and then I look at the beliefs that I have about this thing. And then I take action that would allow those beliefs that are limiting to that reality to dissolve. And I work through the discomfort, and I work through the pain and the questioning and the uncertainty. And I'm like, you know what? There's a reason why I want this thing. Making sure that it's not coming from ego, because usually if it's ego, I don't want it after a few days.
Right.
On something, it's gonna feel strong, and it's gonna feel like, you know what, this is something that my soul wants to experience, so why not go in that direction? Why not try it out? And really, that's the simplest way that I've found that is the easiest way as well to create the things that I want, by just identifying what it is that I think I can and cannot do in order to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. Like keeping this kind of practical way of creating reality at the forefront of yourself. For me, I have to keep a very a practical thing. That's like why I did the timeline jumping thing, is because I'm like, I need a practical process that I can just do so that I can focus my energy, because this world that we live in is wild. Like, this is insane. I don't know if you've ever looked around what's going on, but it's pretty crazy that we're here and that things are happening. But then also just how my life has unfolded has been really crazy. And like, for me to try to even understand the magnitude of what is happening right now, I feel like I sometimes I drive myself into existential dread trying to understand everything. And so what I have to do is bring it back to my simple process. I'm like, how can I simplify this and continue to do this while living amongst this chaos? I read this article, I think yesterday, about the concept of like entropy in the universe and how there's a ton of disorder that's actually occurring in this universe, but then there's pockets of order. And I feel like those pockets of order inside of the disorder that is existence, that comes from simplifying. And I feel like allowing yourself to kind of talk to yourself like you're child is really helpful, because the thing is that manifestation does not come from intelligence. I would even say that it doesn't come from wisdom. Kids manifest things all the time, and they are, they're not, the smartest because they literally haven't. So they haven't existed on here for a while. So letting yourself know that a child could probably manifest $1 million if they understood what $1 million is. There are children manifesting $1 million on YouTube doing Lego videos. Like, it's, these, I feel like making sure that that you don't have to be complicated or complex to create reality is really helpful. It doesn't mean that complexity is not beautiful, because there are some people who create these like insane modalities. They create so many stories behind reality that are so beautiful to just witness. And then sometimes it's a lot. And so you just need to go back to simplifying everything for yourself again.
Yeah. Expression as well. There's so many different ways to get there, right? And just remembering that. And all you have to really feel into is, what way do I want to get there?
Yes.
And then whatever feels aligned action for you to do for that tool or that person or that support. And I think that is the best way that you would want, or your soul would want to experience it being done that way.
Yes. Okay, so we have time for one more question, and it was submitted in here. Boom. How to remain in lifted tension in the midst of transformation. I'm aiming to change jobs.
You want to take that one?
Sorry?
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm looking at it and trying to translate if I'm reading the question correctly. So, to me, it feels like when I'm looking at the question, the visual that I'm getting is how to make sure that the particles are not as dense when you're transforming. So kind of like releasing some density in the midst of transformation is what the question feels like to me. And so to release density in the midst of transformation is to understand that releasing density is what's causing the transformation. When you are allowing things to not be as tight or like as true all the time, like this belief is true, this is what I'm experiencing now, like if you are releasing like, well, is that what I'm experiencing, like getting some looseness around what you believe is happening is beautiful, because from that space where the energy is not as loose, or sorry, not as dense, it's not as like real, stable, solid energy,
Right.
stuff moves around. So that's just the nature, like where this universe changes what it does. And so change is happening. Then you aim at what you want and you get there. That's releasing the tension is, for me, the root of transformation.
I agree with that, because I think like, the tighter energy is wound, right? And the more solid it looks, it feels like that is what is real. And the more that we start to release like the programs and the perceptions and the awareness that we have around that thing, that's when you start to entertain other options, other realities, other potentials to happen for you. And so I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And to keep density released, I think that requires with Jena's work, like subconsciously releasing that tension. So doing upgrades Jena is an amazing way of doing that. For me, I do it through like question asking randomly. I'll just ask myself, I'm like, what's actually happening? Do you know what's happening? It's a lot of awareness, and awareness without judgment is how I continuously release tension. The way that I do it can be kind of frightening, just because there's a kind of always a questioning of like what is true and what's not true that's happening for me, and I'm kind of always in flux with reality. And so if I would say a grounded way of doing it is doing subconscious work, so that you're not constantly kind of like, I don't know what's real. Because that can be really, if you're not ready to like live like that all the time, it can be kind of intense. So So what are you up to? What are you doing? How can we get in touch with you?
Yes. Well, firstly, like, I'm so happy that we did this. There's like such like good rapport and energy. So thank you for inviting me on here, because it was just like, it's my energy, my heart, it just feels so full. So thank you. So yeah, if you guys are interested in my work, obviously you can follow me on Instagram. I have an upgrade coming up this Friday, and it's all about releasing what no longer serves you. So basically all you have to do is sign up, set an intention, and then I facilitate the upgrade distantly. So I go into my meditation. I basically meet you all in your light body form, and then, access these dimensions and energy specifically towards your intention, and then you get an email for integration. So just a little plug if you're interested in doing something right now that I have. I also have some one-on-one availability starting later this fall, so I have a wait list for that. And then, that's pretty much about it. My website, beyondthebelief.com, and I just hope to connect with you guys more, because this was like so fun.
Yes, this is so fun. And I'm so excited about the work that you're doing, because I feel like this is actively changing the way that people look at like transformation and just being alive. I feel like a lot more. So my theory is that we're not going to need as many, the 3D version of this is that we're not going to need as many like hospitals as massage parlors. I feel like, if that makes any sense, I feel like we're going to start to move away from trying to like fix ourselves to just maintaining and keeping our energy in a place that feels like it's massaged, moving the way that it needs to be moving, if that makes any sense. And I feel like your work is doing that in the spiritual world, which is usually where everything starts. So thankful to you, grateful that you're putting this out and then creating this way. For everyone on my podcast listening, my stuff's always in the little box, so you can just click stuff in the box. And I'll also be putting your links to contact you down in there. But thanks everybody for hopping on and asking amazing questions. Like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this. I feel very lit up, and I feel like whenever I'm excited about a podcast, then the people who receive it get really, because my excitement's pouring into it right now, I get really, really lit up. So I'm excited for both of y'all, for everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for watching, and that's all.
All right. Peace. We did that at the same time.
Amazing.
Okay.
Your shit is fine.
I love it. Bye.
Bye.